Here is a frightening truth. In the year 1692, in a small American town, fear became stronger than reason. Neighbors turned against neighbors, friends accused friends, and the accusation was always the same terrible word, witch. This is the story of the Salem witch trials. It is a true story and a sad one. It shows how quickly fear can spread. It shows how ordinary people can do terrible things when they are afraid. Let us go back more than 300 years. Let us travel to a place called Salem in the north of America. Back then it was a small English colony, cold, quiet, and deeply religious. The people of Salem were called Puritans. They had left England to live their faith in their own way. They believed in a strict and simple life. They worked hard, prayed hard, and feared God. But the Puritans feared something else, too. They believed the devil was real. They believed he walked among them in secret. They believed some people made deals with him. Those people, they said, were witches. Life in Salem was not easy. The winters were long and bitterly cold. Food was often short. There were arguments over land and money, and there was very little to do but work and worry. The village also had quarrels. Some families did not trust each other. There were fights about the church and about the land. Under the quiet surface, Salem was full of anger and old wounds. At the center of the village stood the church. Its minister was Reverend Samuel Parris, a stern, thin Puritan minister in his 40s with a long, pale face, dark, serious eyes, and short, dark hair, wearing a plain black coat and white collar. He was a serious and worried man. Many people in the village did not like him. In the minister's house lived his young daughter and his niece. Their names were Betty and Abigail. Betty and Abigail, two young Puritan girls aged about 9 and 11, pale faces, hair under white caps, plain, long gray dresses with white aprons, were only children. In that cold, strict house, they had almost nothing to play with. Also in the house lived a woman named Tituba. Tituba, an enslaved woman with warm brown skin and dark hair tied back, wearing a simple gray worn dress and white apron, a gentle, frightened face. She was a slave, brought from far away. Sometimes she told the girls old stories to pass the long winter hours. Then, one winter day, something strange happened. The two girls began to act very oddly. They screamed for no reason. They shook and cried. They threw themselves onto the floor. The girls said they felt pins in their skin. They hid under chairs. They made strange sounds. Nobody could calm them. Their family was frightened and did not know what to do. So the family called the village doctor. He looked at the girls carefully. He could find no illness in their bodies. He shook his head. Then he said one terrible word, witchcraft. That single word changed everything. If it was witchcraft, then someone had sent it. Someone in the village, the people believed, was secretly serving the devil. But who? Everyone wanted to know. The adults pushed the girls to answer. "Who is hurting you?" they asked. "Tell us the name. Say the name." Again and again they asked. The frightened girls began to name people. The first name was Tituba, the family's own slave. The second was Sarah Good, a poor woman who begged from door to door. The third was Sarah Osborne, an old woman who rarely came to church. Notice something about these three women. They were all weak. They were poor, or strangers, or without power. They were easy to blame. Nobody would stand up to protect them. The three women were arrested. They were brought before the village leaders for questioning. The whole village crowded in to watch. Everyone wanted to see the witches confess. Sarah Good said she was innocent. Sarah Osborne said she was innocent too. But then it was Tituba's turn to speak. And Tituba, frightened and alone, did something that made everything far worse. Tituba confessed. Perhaps she was afraid. Perhaps she thought a confession would save her life. She said the devil had come to her. She said he was like a tall man in black. Tituba told a long and frightening story. She spoke of a strange book. She spoke of animals that talked. She said other witches were out there too, but she would not say all their names. This was the spark that lit the fire. Now the people believed there were many hidden witches in Salem. Any neighbor might be one. Fear turned into panic, and panic spread from house to house. Soon more girls in the village began to have fits. They screamed and pointed too, and each time they pointed, another name was spoken. Each name meant another arrest, another prisoner, another trial. At first the accused were the usual outsiders, but then something changed. The girls began to name respected people, churchgoers, good neighbors, people no one had ever suspected before. One of them was Rebecca Nurse, a frail, dignified old woman in her 70s with a lined, kind face, gray hair under a white cap, wearing a plain dark dress and white collar. She was gentle, kind, and deeply religious. The whole village respected her. When her name was spoken, many people simply could not believe it. But belief did not matter anymore. If the girls pointed at you, you were arrested. It did not matter how good you were. It did not matter how long the village had known you. A special court was set up to judge the accused. Serious men in dark coats became the judges. They came to Salem to find the witches and to stop the devil once and for all. In this court, the trials were strange and unfair. The girls would scream and fall down in front of the judges. They said the prisoner's spirit was hurting them, even from across the room. This was called spectral evidence. It meant the judges accepted things that no one else could see. A girl only had to say she saw your spirit. That alone could send you to prison. How could anyone defend themselves against that? You could not prove where your spirit was. You could not show the judges what was invisible. The accused were trapped from the very start. Something else went wrong too. The people who confessed were not hanged, but the people who said they were innocent were the ones put on trial. So the truth itself became dangerous. Many frightened people confessed to lies just to stay alive. They named other people too. And so the list of the accused grew longer and longer, the prison filled with men and women. The prison was a terrible place. It was cold, dark, and dirty. Prisoners waited for weeks and months. Some were old, some were sick. A few even died there before their trial came. Even a small child was accused. Sarah Good had a little daughter only 4 years old. That small girl was questioned and put in chains. Fear had lost all sense of mercy. Then The trials turned deadly. The first person to be judged and condemned was a woman named Bridget Bishop. The court found her guilty. She was sentenced to die. On a June morning, she was taken to a low hill outside the town. There, before a silent crowd, she was hanged. She was the first of many. The killing had begun. The people called it Gallows Hill. Over that terrible summer, more and more prisoners were brought there. One by one, they were tried, condemned, and taken up the hill to die. Gentle Rebecca Nurse was one of them. The first jury said she was innocent. The crowd was unhappy. So the judges asked the jury to think again. In the end, she too was condemned. Rebecca Nurse was an old and holy woman. Before she died, she forgave those who had accused her. Her quiet goodness only made the injustice feel more cruel to those who watched. There was also a man named John Proctor. He was a strong, honest farmer. He had said out loud that the trials were foolish. He said the girls were lying. For that, he too was accused. Proctor fought the charges bravely. He knew the whole thing was madness, but his voice was not enough. The court condemned him as well. Speaking the truth had become a crime in Salem. Perhaps the strangest story of all was that of Giles Corey, a tough, stubborn old farmer in his 80s with a weathered face, white hair and beard, wearing a rough brown farmer's coat. He was over 80 years old. When the court asked him to answer the charges, the old man simply refused to speak. Giles Corey stayed silent on purpose. He knew the court was unfair. He would not play their game. So the court tried to force him to speak by pressing heavy stones upon him. For 2 long days the old man would not give in. He would not say he was guilty. He would not say he was innocent. In the end, he died, silent and unbroken, still refusing to bow. By the end of that summer, about 20 people had died. 19 were hanged on the hill. 1 old man was pressed. Several more died waiting in the cold prison. All of them were innocent. Think about that for a moment. Not one of these people was really a witch. There were no witches at all. There was only fear and lies and a court that believed the impossible. So how did such madness ever stop? Slowly, people began to wake up. The accusations had grown too wild. Now important and powerful people were being named. Even the governor's own wife was mentioned. Some wise ministers began to speak out. They said the spectral evidence was wrong. They said an invisible spirit was not real proof. They warned that innocent people were surely being killed. One minister wrote a famous line. He said it is better that 10 witches escape than that one innocent person die. Slowly, that idea began to spread. People started to feel deep shame. At last, the governor acted. He had seen too much. He stopped the special court. He said the spectral evidence could no longer be used. Without it, the cases simply fell apart. The remaining prisoners were slowly set free. The trials were over. The town of Salem grew quiet again. But the quiet was heavy. Too much harm had already been done to undo. The families of the dead were left with empty homes. Husbands, wives, mothers, and neighbors were gone forever. And the whole village had to live with what its fear had done. In the years that followed, Salem tried to face its guilt. People saw how blind they had been. They saw how fear had made them cruel. Slowly, they tried to make things right. The colony held a special day of sorrow. People fasted and prayed for forgiveness. One of the judges himself stood up in church. In front of everyone, he said he was deeply sorry. Some of the girls who had accused others grew up and felt terrible shame. Years later, one of them stood in church and asked the whole village to forgive her for the lies she had told. In time, the government cleared the names of the dead. It said they had been innocent all along. It even paid a little money to their families. But nothing could bring the lost people back. Today, Salem remembers its terrible year. There is a quiet memorial for the people who died. Their names are carved in stone so that no one will ever forget what fear once did. So, what can this sad story teach us? The people of Salem were not monsters. They were ordinary people. They were farmers, mothers, and children. That is what makes their story so frightening. Their mistake was to let fear rule them. Once they were afraid, they stopped asking for proof. They believed rumors. They trusted screams instead of facts. And innocent people paid the price. A single rumor was enough to end a life. A pointed finger was stronger than years of good living. In Salem, fear became the judge, and fear is a very cruel and blind judge indeed. This is why we still tell the Salem story after all these years. It is a warning. It reminds us to think calmly. It reminds us to ask for the truth, even when everyone around us is afraid. When we hear a frightening rumor, we can remember Salem. We can stop and ask a simple question. Is this really true? Where is the proof? Those quiet questions can save innocent lives. Fear is a natural feeling. Everyone feels it sometimes. But fear must never take the place of fairness. The story of Salem shows us what can happen when it does. We must not forget. The victims of Salem were not witches. They were innocent men and women who died because of fear and lies. Remembering them honestly is the smallest way we can honor their lives. And their story still speaks to us today. Fear can appear in any town, in any time, but so can courage and truth and the quiet voice that dares to say, wait, this is not right. So let us learn from Salem. Let us be slow to blame and quick to ask for proof. Let us protect the weak instead of pointing at them. That is how we keep a story like this from happening again. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If it helped your English, please leave a like and subscribe, because a new story is coming in just a few days. Your support truly means a lot. And do not stop practicing now. Keep your English going while it is fresh. Tap the video you see on the screen to watch the next story, or open the playlist and keep listening with me. Every story you hear makes your listening a little stronger. So take a deep breath, stay curious, and let us meet again in the next story. Until then, keep listening and keep learning. Goodbye for now.